There's never been a higher stakes moment for marketing leaders. Gartner reports that 63% of CMOs are under pressure to prove ROI for AI investments, yet most still say that they're figuring out how to blend tech with human creativity, and the landscape of platforms and use cases keeps expanding. It can be overwhelming. Today's discussion gets to the heart of that: how to build teams that drive real results through AI and automation without losing authenticity and brand voice. You'll hear from leaders who've done it across both startups and enterprise scale, financial, FinTech, digital health, and SaaS, and walk away with frameworks for scaling personalization, getting stakeholders bought in, building teams, and upskilling talent. My name is Aaron Menken. I'm the Executive Vice President of Gain Reshaping, and I've been helping tech companies build the people and contractor mix that bring AI-enabled marketing organizations to life. I'm thrilled to host this conversation with such exceptional leaders. Let's meet them. So we have Dave Katz, who has led marketing organizations and teams at RudderStack, Amazon, Domo. Kathleen Tedesco, who has led tech-enabled, data-empowered marketing teams at Prudential Financial and E-Trade, and Ali Price, who's led growth stage digital health marketing orgs, Wealth, Dignify Health, as well as in the financial services space at Stifel. So I'm going to have the panelists introduce themselves, and look forward to hearing.
Good morning.
Yeah, let's start with Kathleen. Sorry to interrupt.
Good morning. I'm Kathleen Tedesco. I have 20 years experience in financial services marketing in both the B2B and B2C space. I spent most of my career focused on developing data-driven marketing strategies, all delivering personalized and omnichannel campaigns. I most recently at Prudential was part of a team that led the digital transformation, really integrating our MarTech stack, data, and even AI into our marketing framework from marketing strategy development through execution. I've also built scalable operating models, and most recently been tapping into how do we use AI as part of the content supply chain to be more efficient and more productive, as well as just doing more with less.
Thank you. Ali, love to hear about your background.
Yes. Good morning. I am Ali Price. I spent the first 15 years of my career in the financial space, but today really excited to share kind of my experience with AI over the last 5 years in the startup digital health space. I have led marketing teams, both building and scaling companies from seed stage to Series C and successful exit. And really today, I want to talk about how AI is particularly valuable in regulated industries, where both precision and compliance matter significantly, but so does creativity. So super excited to talk to you guys about that today.
Awesome. Thanks. Dave, go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Dave Katz. I started my career off as a data analyst and got into marketing through that. I wanted to get more hands-on with a lot of the metrics and the learnings I had. So I really wanted to figure out, how do I optimize businesses using marketing? I spent a little over 4 years at Amazon Ads, where I built out the developer marketing function. And I would say that was the pre-AI time. AI was just getting started, but we weren't using it much. And for the past year, I was running marketing at RudderStack, where it was all about the shift towards AI. And now going forward, really thinking about how do I build teams, enable teams with AI, because I can't imagine doing it any other way. And I'm sure we'll talk about all the details today.
Awesome. Well, to start us off, I'd love to ask everybody, what has AI meant to the organizations that you've been a part of? What do you see as the biggest opportunities for adoption in marketing, and what's holding it back from realizing its potential?
Sure, I can jump in first. I think where I've seen it utilized the most in our organization is really on that content generation. And I think where we have some opportunity is to continue to train the LLMs on our brand voice and our style, and then also integration, right? So we have content development through execution. How do you even become more efficient with connecting those different systems? But I do think one of the barriers, especially in a larger organization that I've had experience in, is the readiness. Ensuring that teams are not siloed and they have a purpose of why they're bringing in AI and what is the goal of using AI and how do you really want to achieve what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and I can build a little bit off of that. With similar to Kathleen in the B2B space, I think we've leveraged it a lot for content creation, campaign optimization, things like that. But in the B2C space, we have also started tinkering with, how do we leverage it for as an additional channel? The ability to have two-way communication via SMS, the ability to possibly make a phone call. I think that this is a very digital health is a very super regulatory environment. So I think it's a little bit easier for us to use in the B2B space. The B2C space is catching up. But I would say that it's just continuing to allow us to be more strategic in our thinking by having these tools.
Yeah, I think about it in two different ways. One is very much how do I superpower the people on the team and myself? AI to me is a huge accelerator for the amount of work that somebody can put out and hopefully make that work even better. And on the other side, what can AI enable that we couldn't really do easily before? Um, like one example is having a chatbot on the website that somebody can interact with. That used to be a human who had only specific hours, or you'd have to staff up for it, or the person may or may not know the answer and just hand them off. With AI, you can give them all the information, and hopefully the quality of the support is better. But it definitely covers more of the hours in a day. But yeah, there are a lot of use cases, like primarily as I'm thinking about staffing up a team, it really comes down to where the areas that they can accelerate. Content's a massive one, as Ali and Kathleen said. Like that is almost always the first thing we go to because you want to scale up the amount of content you have on social or on your blog, or one sheets. And it gets things done significantly faster, and typically with even more depth when you include AI, but you don't hand it fully over to AI.
I think an additional piece too, as marketing leaders, I'm sure we have all at a time had designers on our teams, and how designers are also now leveraging AI, I think is very interesting. I myself am not a designer, but am extremely intrigued when I have a designer on my team show me what they can do now in these tools leveraging AI.
Great. How are brands using AI to drive marketing performance without compromising authenticity and personalization?
On my end, I think it enables more authenticity and personalization. The you don't want to overdo it on tools, but I think that there's like a nice base level. If you're using AI in a smart way, you're feeding it all of the information that's usually just in somebody's brain. It might be one or two people who are really thinking about brand voice. They might write a document about it that they share with a company. But how many people really read it and fully understand it and then implement it in all of the work that they do? Since they're already doing that work, they feed that into AI. All of a sudden, all the content that it outputs should be based on those brand guidelines. It's not always perfect, but it actually creates a really good starting point. And if other people are feeding into this and they share that across, it's actually much easier to then share those brand guidelines and use those across the company.
I think too, over the last couple of years, tools have gotten much better at creating tighter guardrails and learning more about your brand guidelines, your tone of voice. But ultimately, I do think it leans back to the company on like what are best practices, what is the governance within the company on how to use AI. And I think that's really important also.
Yeah, I would agree with what Ali and Dave said. And just to add on to both points, it really goes back to what we're feeding the LLM, right? So in making sure that it has the most up-to-date brand guidelines and the utilization of the tool, the feedback back and forth, those conversations you're having with AI to get stronger, better content will just drive better content. But I also think this is the part where that human piece, which people get nervous that AI is going to take over the human element. This is where it's so important for that human voice because we need to make sure that it is authentic. It is sounding like us. It is sounding different, right? So I think this is the most important part is that this is where we become editors versus maybe writers and really embracing the brand and understanding the brand and just generating better content.
Thank you. And where are marketers getting it wrong when it comes to automating campaigns and using AI?
I think that a lot of it probably has to do with training. A lot of it is it's not enough back and forth. That's what I've experienced probably the most. It's not just a simple ask AI to do this and then copy and paste whatever it responds. There needs to be a significant amount of back and forth, like Kathleen just said, more of an editor role. I also always encourage my team to ask whatever AI tool they're using, like what the source is, because I think that's also very valuable, especially in the digital health space that's also very much changing. The rules, regulatory stuff changes every year. You can't be pulling something that's 3 years old. So I think that's something that I've run into the most, is just assuring that you still have that human element and you're definitely reading what it says and not just copy and pasting.
I would also add everything Alice said is 100% spot on. I think where I would go to is AI is that shiny new object that everyone wants to use. And you'll hear me say this a lot. It goes back to the use case of what you're trying to achieve and not forget that's the backbone. So before you bring on a new tool and just understand why you're bringing it on and understand what you're trying to achieve. Otherwise, it'll just be another tool that gets added to the tech box that nobody uses. And I think that everyone is just focused on trying to get AI into their systems, into their platforms, but not really understanding the why behind why they want to bring this platform in.
I also think it's depending on AI to do too much of the process. So you have to really focus on where AI is extremely strong and where the current weaknesses are. AI learns from everything that has been done before. So it has some level of creativity, but not as much as a really smart, creative human who has tested out different approaches. I think AI tends to default to the average. Now, it's an amazing doer. It's an amazing implementer. It can do it faster. It can analyze faster than anything else. But to me, it changes the mindset of the types of people I would hire or the types of tasks I would have them do. They need to be much more creative to get the benefits of AI. And if you hand too much off to that, especially for marketing campaign idea, like you can use it for ideation. It gives you a good baseline of what's been done. But if you really want to raise the bar on the work that you do, you need those employees or you need to do a lot of that yourself. And a lot of marketers go wrong by either handing off too much or assuming that people who don't have that creativity or are too junior can elevate their strategic side when AI doesn't do that as well.
Well, that raises a really important point of the makeup of the marketing team, the human side of the marketing team that is best set up to test, experiment, learn, generate productive work through AI. So, how is AI changing the structure and skill set that you look for when you build up your marketing teams?
Yeah, I think it's going to constantly evolve. Like I said, when I was at Amazon, it was just we weren't even thinking about hiring for AI skill sets. It was before that was really a thing, and we just wanted really strong. In my area, it was content marketing and developer marketing and just writers. At Rudderstack, we had a group of people who we were trying to train. I was really focused on training how to use AI more, and some people got it pretty quickly, and some people would follow along and figure it out over time. Um, I think we're 1 or 2 years, maybe 3 years away from people who are AI native, where everything they do is driven by AI. And I think this transition period is, are you hiring people who are close to AI native, can learn the AI side, or can pick it up really quickly? Or do you have one extremely strong AI native person who might not be as strong at performance marketing or as strong at content marketing, but that person can then support all of those specialties and help them get up to speed with AI? I don't know if that's going to be a long-term role or if it's a gap role at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we're in a space now where it's more of just hybrid teams, balancing folks that have very good technical fluency with storytellers. And I know for me, my hope is that we can be more creative because we have more time to do the creative things. So yeah, I think it's just, it's all like Dave said, it's just the way that we produce things, the speed in which they can be done, the analytics that can be driven through the use of AI, which I know as marketers, that's a huge deal, right? Because I think we've always been in this place of how do we show ROI.
Yeah, and I one more thing I'd like to add too is that a lot of it comes down to the mindset. We talk about adopting AI, so the willingness to change the different ways we approach things. And from an underlying skill set, I know with a lot of other technologies, you need to be able to code or you need to be able to know how to use a platform. AI is evolving and changing. So I think in this current state, maybe 2 to 3 years, it may change. But really, we need to be curious and always want to learn because everything is new. We're all learning together. So being curious and wanting to just figure out how to use something, be a self-starter, right? Motivated because it's really on an individual to adapt, right? To try that new tool. I think critical thinking in terms of the problem solving, the creativity, that's where we're going to see, I think, a lot of focus versus the mundane task.
Yeah, and actually combining what you both said, it made me think about when I started my career as a data analyst. We had marketers and we had analysts who were giving the marketers and feeding them information about what worked and didn't work. And I don't know if that role completely goes away, but I think it mostly goes away. The marketer has to be the person you hire on your team has to be curious. They have to be a self-starter and they have to have an analytics mindset. They don't have to necessarily know how to pull SQL queries, but they have to know what questions to ask the AI because all of the metrics, all of those analytics should be fully accessible through a queryable system by just asking questions from AI. So potentially it gets rid of the analyst, but the marketer has to turn into that questioner that they weren't before.
Mhm. And given these skill sets that are now higher value and some skill sets that are maybe lower value, how do you change the way you interview to identify those skill sets?
I can jump in here, I guess. I've been thinking about this one a lot recently, and there's I want to know that people know how to use AI. So I go back and forth between do I just give them a take-home task and expect them to use AI, or do I ask them to use AI? But I really care about how did they get to the solution? How do they push AI to get better? I almost want to review, or I do want to review their whole back and forth with the AI to see how they got to that answer, because I expect people to do that day to day. And it's not cheating, but I also want to know that they have enough expertise in the specific function that they know how to lead AI, know when AI goes wrong.
I think for me, it's just someone, people who are willing to continue to learn. Um, like we've all said, this space is evolving significantly. There are a ton of tools that do a ton of different things in many different ways for marketing. And so just that willingness to explore, to test, and like just the excitement behind it. I know for me, and I think as all of us for leaders, it's, the importance of us also leveraging AI. I love it. I'm a remote first worker. I'm alone a lot. I kind of find it to be my friend sometimes. So to be able to, have back and forth when you're brainstorming something, I think that's a great way to leverage it.
Yeah,
What
and I actually, oh, sorry. Yeah, I was going to say, I think it goes back to that critical thinking, and I did mention it as well. It's how is someone going to approach a problem, right? Because AI is a conversation to Ali's point, right? So it's also how do you interacting, right? So how do you think through problems? How do you get from point A to point B to point C? It may not be the right answer at point C, but also just thinking through how did you get there and that inquisitive nature. So I think I would challenge, to say how do you maybe provide a problem or an example and just see how your interviewee candidate thinks through that problem. Because I do think it's going to be that critical thinking is going to be elevated versus the mundane tasks.
Great. And to piggyback on a topic Ali just brought up about what are the things that leaders should be doing with AI for their own work, as well as to manage the work of their juniors to be the right leader of an AI powered marketing team? What are those high value functions for leaders?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ali said it, do it. Show your team that you're using it. And then, maybe carving out time for the teams to do it together. So I know sometimes things I have done with my team is like, let's all do it together. And at the end of a week, 2 weeks, whatever, we just carve out, let's get together and share our learnings and show what we did. It's more collaborative to show that everyone's learning together and but carving out the time to learn. I think that's so important because everyone is so busy, but really giving your teams that space and knowing how important it is to say, please take this time to learn because it's going to advance you, but it's also going to advance the team as well as the organization.
Yeah, I think one thing that we've done on my teams too is after a large project or something that maybe took an extended period of time is to do a little bit of a retro after and really like go through and talk about as a team how we leveraged AI and where we leveraged it. And even like be really blunt. Like how much time do you think that saved? And I think, a space where I have found on the B2B side where it's been extremely helpful is in the creative, like brainstorming of events and conferences and trade shows and, what are we doing there? Who's doing what? How are we, what should our tchotchkes be? The levels that you can use it for are immense.
Yeah, to me, it's just constantly using it and then being transparent about it, and finding new ways and pushing the team to do it. The like an example I have that I plan to talk to my team about is I have I have notes for meetings. We have AI that summarizes meetings as next steps, but what happens with those? And there's the AI side of it, and then there's the process flow. So using something like Zapier or N8N, these are tools that marketers and everybody should start playing around with more. So automated tasks or automated next steps. So if we finish a meeting and there are three next steps, there's a way to send those directly to Google Tasks or whatever your task list is. So and then taking that, showing the team, this is how I created it. Here's a step by step. That could actually really lead to marketers and teams beyond just developers having more hackathon sessions. I actually think this is the first time that we feel like we could participate in something like a hackathon, especially with the vibe coding systems, with Lovable, with anything like that. I've had fairly junior people build some really impressive capabilities just by chatting with an interface. It might not be production ready, but at least you think about what's the problem, what's the solution, and they really start thinking about how to productize it, and it gets them out of just the day-to-day marketing tasks.
Terrific stuff. Um, and how are you approaching upskilling your existing staff, your legacy staff that was, came into marketing operating in a pre-AI world? How are you working with them to get them to integrate these, leading edge processes and tools? And what are the challenges of doing that?
I think what Kathleen said is great. Doing things together as teams, carving out, a half hour, 45 minutes a week to get together as a team. I've been very lucky that I have always had at least one person on the team that's an expert at a specific tool. Typically, that's why we've implemented that tool. And having that person teach everyone else, I think is a really good way. And in addition to that, I think we all use Slack or whatever chat is, when something cool happens, when you're leveraging AI is to share it with your team and, instruct them on how you did it. That's kind of how I do it.
Yeah, I would just add to that too. It's change management, right? So regardless if it's AI or something else, one of the things that I found really works is have champions, right? So have champions that become those voice of how to use it and show how to use it, and then be the person who they go to for questions. So really building a champion network. This could work for anything. It doesn't have to work for AI. It could really just be anything that you're trying to get teams to utilize more. And one of the other things that I found in terms of adoption of AI is bringing the teams along the way. So before bringing in a platform, bring the users in to help evaluate if it makes sense. Because if it doesn't make sense for the end users who are supposed to be using this platform, it doesn't make sense to bring it in. So I think it's really bringing everyone along the way from the beginning and have that champion once it's brought in.
All the team stuff is great. I fully agree with all of those. I also, on top of it, throw in a lot of coaching and one-on-ones. And you have to have your AI glasses on as you're talking to your team, to the individuals about anything they're working on, any project. And if they don't bring it up, I ask, how are you using AI to enhance this? Where are the specific areas? And maybe I sound like a broken record, but there are times where it really adds value. An example of this, this was close to a year ago. I had amazing content marketer, just one of the best, like A-level player, just not used to using AI much. And when you talk about content, it's not an either or, but an A player with AI is extremely powerful. And one of the tasks I had was we have this old, like 40-page booklet that we were using. It was a few years old and it needed to be updated. And the immediate response was, oh, this will take 2 months. I have to edit it. I have to rewrite it, go through all that process. Great. What if you just take the PDF and throw it into AI and have it tell you exactly which areas need to be updated? She didn't think about that. But all of a sudden, it went from a 2 month project to probably a 2 to 3 week project. There's still a lot of manual work. It doesn't get rid of it completely, but they're accelerators on it. So coaching each individual, understanding their tasks, and just reminding them over and over until they become more native with it.
That's a really dialed in example, and it made me think, I'd love to hear your description of people on your teams that were AI power users. What did they do that enabled them to excel with it? Feel free to have a think on that for a second, but I'd love to hear a picture of what that looked like.
Yeah, I think everybody shows signs of it in different ways. I had one person in customer marketing who realized it was very difficult to manage all of the like the value props for each customer, or manage all the customer stories. And then how do you decide? We have so many customers. How do you decide when their references, if a salesperson needs something? It was all managed through Google Sheet, and basically just went on Lovable or one of those systems and overnight vibe coded this whole system. They just plugged the Google Sheet into it as the backend database. But all of a sudden, there are now links for ask the salesperson for a reference from this person. This person has been asked 5 times or 7 times. And then it stack ranked everything based on the industry, the size of the company, the size of their budget with us. So you could basically have a much easier platform for salespeople to log into. You actually remove the person from the process, but she was able to develop this whole system. And that significantly changed the day-to-day going forward.
Yeah, I'll build on that. I have been very lucky to have Asana super users and working in a remote environment where my teams are spread out sometimes internationally. That has been immensely helpful. To be able to, like Dave just said, to be able to not be in a necessarily just even a siloed marketing team, but to have, other like product sales teams play roles too. That has been very helpful. And it's definitely kept me on task. It's great to be able to see everything that's going on when you have larger teams doing lots of things at once.
Two examples come to mind at two very different ends of the spectrum. Prudential is a big user of Writer. So just thinking through all the different apps that have been built, from knowledge graphs of auditing the voice of the customer to just get more granular and be able to provide the service organization with more data there. And then on the other end of the spectrum, using from an execution perspective, we leveraged Gradial, and it was been amazing because things that would took 10 hours to do manually took 15 minutes, right? So building all those examples and got the team excited to say, oh, I don't have to spend 10 hours doing this project anymore. Gradial can do it in a minute, right? So I think it's just those are the great use cases from either using the data to just hand off to teams to do more, or just identifying ways of being more efficient so we can be more strategic on the back end.
Thank you. This topic made me think of the following question, which is how do you please compare and contrast the value of vendor-led information about what AI can do versus, groundswell team-led information around how they've used AI, what productive uses there are, and what are the pros and cons and pitfalls of both?
I think we get so many benefits from both, and it just depends on the use case. There's so many AI tools out there that are very separated out. There's some where it makes a lot of sense to just have a very point-based solution. And there are times when you need everything interconnected, and the more interconnected it needs to be, I think that gets better when it's driven by the team. When you're thinking about connecting your analytics database with your marketing system, with your CRM, all of that together, there aren't a ton of solutions externally that do that. And maybe there will be over time, but when that's led by a team to say, oh, I can get my analytics faster by plugging all this together, wonderful. Um, that being said, I was looking at like chatbots for the website, and we had a human on it, then we switched to AI. That's not something necessarily that is vendor led and super helpful that they've developed those capabilities and that they enhance the chat interface with an AI that I don't think we were, I mean, maybe capable, but really not the way that they are.
I'm going to say, I think, Dave, you nailed it in the beginning of your sentence in terms of that. I think individually it's platform led, right? Because they're so specialized right now. But I think as teams start to utilize it and connect it from beginning to end and identifying how are these synergies working, I think that's when it becomes the team. And I do think that we really need to focus on how do you connect the different platforms to work together, because otherwise you're still going to have still going to be clunky through the process until they are connected together. But I think that's on the teams, the users of these platforms, to identify where we need to connect and where those synergies are.
Yeah, and I'll just say, in the digital health industry, highly regulatory, there's always going to need to be that human element. I foresee that there's probably always going to have to be that human element. And I think for my teams, it's always just been encouraging them to test things, make sure you're measuring the impact. And that next step of like how to integrate those pieces, I think we've talked about a little bit. There's so many tools. Maybe someday soon someone will create one tool that does it all.
And I have a question about how you manage that experimentation and testing. Google famously had, I think it was the 80-20 rule of, hey, spend 20% of your time on, projects if you're choosing that will help you, advance and innovate. And with AI and also the amount of vendor-led communication and information there is out there, your staff can burn a tremendous amount of time talking to vendors and or experimenting with stuff that never has a productive outcome. So what are some ways in which you've encouraged staff to manage that balance of production, do your job in the way we know how to do it, with productive capacity building, figure out how to do it better next time?
I think for me, when I said testing, I'm talking a lot about content. We do a ton of B2C communication, direct mail, email, text messages, all like every channel you could think of. And so every single campaign that we do is A/B tested, every single one. And so maybe it's just one word, maybe it's a headline, maybe it's something that was completely written by AI and another, tested against a piece that was completely written by a human. So that's what I was referring to. That's what we do. And quite frankly, the results are sometimes very interesting. And sometimes can't even be explained. But that's a lot of the testing that we're doing, which is just from like content development.
I think the 80-20 rule is probably right. Maybe it's 90-10. I think depending on your team and the work, because you can't take away from the work that needs to get done. I look at it as we identifying those use cases, as an organization, what are we trying to achieve? And then you're going to have to whittle out, right? Because there are so many platforms and just pick one or two that aligns to that use case. Is it we're trying to drive efficiency through our execution platforms? We're trying to enable more self-service and content generation. I think it's focusing on what you're trying to achieve and then being really focused on which platforms and it's okay to fail, right? If a pilot fails, it's okay. But I think it's willing that approach to be specific and then iterative, right? Versus trying to do it all at once.
Yeah, so much depends on timing, your team, the opportunity. I'm starting next week at a new company where I have to build a team from scratch. So I'm probably 90% towards testing and 10% towards the data, or flip it completely. Because as I'm thinking about hiring a team from scratch, I know I need a certain amount of content written, but I can't just go and hire three content writers right away. So we get a huge long-term benefit by finding the right process with AI with our first hire. But that's completely different for every team and every organization. So to me, it's about opportunity costs. And I think that people and teams really just need to evaluate what is the long-term value gained from it. Um, for example, even just chatbot on the website, I either have staffed up three people at different hours who are able to manage that chatbot, or it's just quiet at night, or I turn on the AI, and the opportunity cost is great because I don't necessarily need to hire for that. We just need to teach it properly. Um, a marketing operations person, there's not really much AI that can enhance the work that they do, but they could then use AI across different areas and enable AI elsewhere. So, data and analytics, huge opportunity that I think is on the lower cost end. But yeah, every role is different, every opportunity is different, and depending on where your team is at today.
And let's talk about use cases and the approach to generating strong use cases to have AI and other tools solve for. How do you guys approach developing these use cases, both from technical, non-technical users, both at the C-suite as well as the junior levels?
I think it's pretty, I don't want to say basic, but I think it goes down to what is either the organization or team's goal, understanding that first, and then identifying the right vendor to do that, and then working with that vendor because each vendor in this space is so different, right? So, and how they'll support a use case development. So, some vendors they're new, they're just starting up, so maybe they'll do it for free, or maybe they'll, right? So I think it's evaluating that use case based on your goal and who the vendor is. But the most important part, I know I'm going to sound like a broken record, is the team that will be ultimately doing the work after the use case test out, bring them along to input how the use case and that test should be built to ensure that it's being built how it actually will be operationalized.
I also think um, there's a lot of due diligence or a lot of time that has to go into just understanding what day-to-day tasks do people have that are wasting their time. They still might be crucial for the business, but where are they spending time that could be automated? And this is the conversation we used to have about, oh, when do we hire a junior employee under this person to take away those tasks? Now is it an employee, a junior employee, or is it done with AI? And really think about the amount of time that is taken away of what I would call lower value tasks that enables them to focus on higher value tasks. And I think that we can now think about it almost like more in three-dimensional, that some things can be automated, some things can be handed off to people, and the goal is to just up level everybody's work to really focusing more on the high level tasks while still accomplishing the low level. But yeah, it's if you think about how much time you used to go into research and content, that can just be sped up significantly with a $20 a month license to ChatGPT or Anthropic. That's super low cost and just enables everybody very quickly. But yeah, as you think about tools, it's what is the specific action that's being moved over, or what is it enabling that you never could before?
Completely agree with Dave. And I think that's just, the transparent communication with your teams, right? Being able to help, what is their day-to-day, help them identify where they could leverage an AI tool. I know that I've had people tell me that before, just through conversation of like something I've been working on. So I think that that is, that's important.
Um, I have another question came to mind as we were talking through this, which is the evaluation process of vendors, right? There are your big tech players that have, multiple layers of enterprise security, and, sort of have their AI feature within a, more robust suite of tech. Whereas there's constantly, productivity hacking, vendors that are coming up with really cool solutions for, these use cases. So how do you balance, particularly within regulated industries, how do you balance, the security and the operability of the, enterprise tech players with the innovation of the upstart players?
That's a really great question and a tricky question. I don't know if there is a balance, to be honest. I know with financial services, very highly regulatory, there is a whole process, right? There's a whole process where a vendor review. So before you can even think about that use case, right, the vendor review process and then the contractual sign off and what are they going to have access to. So I do think that that isn't probably a challenge with a highly regulated industry where you're not as nimble, you won't be as nimble and flexible to test some of these smaller AI platforms versus the larger ones. I just think it's a limitation because of the industry itself.
Completely agree with Kathleen. Similar in the digital health space, everybody wants to know how you're leveraging AI. How are you using AI? But then when push comes to shove and the contract's signed, it's, I don't know if we should use AI. So it's a huge balance.
I'll how do I put this gently? There's a reason I don't like working for large companies anymore, and it's because I like breaking stuff. I like testing new things all the time. Now, I try to be as safe as possible. We go through all the contractual stuff. We do all the due diligence. But when you're in a startup, it's sink or swim. So we're required to move a lot faster. And just I think everybody's personalities. For me, it was like I like that I'm in a smaller environment where I can just test and learn constantly. Now, you want to make sure that you're still doing the work and not only testing and learning. But it is nice being in a place that you want to be safe, you want to make sure all the data is protected, but there are less regulatory requirements generally, so you can test these things out. But obviously, always make sure that customer data, everything else is fully protected. So we do have that in the process, but definitely I am able now, compared to where I was previously, to test more tools, see how they impact the business, move on from them if there's no impact or sign quickly. So to me, that's pretty fun.
And finally, what is your best advice for marketing leaders to excel with AI and automation? What are the key things that you think that all marketing leaders should do in the next year to be ahead of the curve?
I'll go first. I think, and we've kind of all said this, I think having a clear strategy, don't jump in head first, start small, measure impacts, and really take the opportunity to celebrate wins with your team so that they continue to be excited and innovative also.
I agree with everything Ellie said. It's almost like she read my mind. I think let's not treat AI as a tech project, but more of a cultural change and treat it as change management. Test and learn. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? Really, and scale it. And some things may work, some things may not work, and I think that's okay. So have that more of that test and learn culture. Some organizations, older organizations, may not have that, and I think it's so important to embrace that. And then, again, bring the team along, right? Make them part of those decisions because that's the way that you're going to get acceptance to change.
Yeah, I fully agree with all of that. there's so many shiny objects out there, so don't try to get all of them at once. As much as I enjoy testing them, it's impossible to get the benefit from all of them, and some don't even have benefit. So so much is about evaluating where are the highest impact wins. Not everything needs to have AI. I mean, over time it probably will, but for now it's where the big wins. And if you can show one, two, or three big wins along the way that enable your team, enable individuals, I think that helps the team fully understand how they should be thinking about AI in the future. I think it positions you well within your company as showing those wins very clearly and explaining what else it up levels. Does it get you better results? Does it help people work on other projects that have more impact? It helps you with your career by being, you can position yourself as being AI first or AI native. Um, with anything, it's what are those, couple of wins that have outsized impact that then will trickle down towards other ideas in the future.
Well, we've covered a tremendous amount of ground, and I'm grateful to Kathleen, Ali, Dave. Thank you so much for bringing the heat today, bringing such great insight about this fast evolving topic. I'm sure those who watch this will have a lot of takeaways. So thank you so much.